Hello, students. Welcome to IAT 106, Spatial Thinking and Communicating. My name is Nakmi, and I'll be your instructor for this course. Just to give you a little bit brief background about myself, I have a background in architecture, and I'm a recent grad from CSFU. I did a PhD in computational design. You may say that my PhD research work is more um, does involve lots of work within UX research as well as UI, user interface design. And so I will not be teaching this course alone. So there are two other members in our team, Arfin Muhayyiddin and Ali Asghar Rashid. They both will be the TS for this course. They'll be teaching D101, D102. Actually, we call it E11, E102, E103, and E104. Which one of these labs each one of them is going to teach, I'll be talking about that in couple of minutes to give you although they will be introducing themselves in the labs, just to give you a little bit overview or brief introduction to them. Arafin has just like myself, he also has a background in architecture, and he is a current PhD student from the same lab, computational design lab, that I graduated from. Ali Asghar is a current CX student. He has taken this course before, and he has successfully completed this course, I must say, and we are so glad to have him on board. Arfin and myself have taught this course previously before. For Ali, it will be first time. Well, it will be first time for all of us to deliver all of this online. So I hope this is our first time creating such video content. I hope it is as useful to you as we intend it to be, or we expect it to be. Now this course has been offered by CR for the past decade or so, and it has evolved. Although it has evolved, it has changed every year. There has been lots of new content added, new problem challenges being added, and the projects have changed and evolved over the years. And every year it is so much fun. I've been involved in this course for the past few years, perhaps 3 to 4 years, and every year it is really a lot of fun developing this course a little bit further than what it was last year, but having all this with keeping it with all this growth that has been coming in this course, still the essence of this course has still stayed the same. So it is quite important for me to really credit the people who developed the vision for this course. And so the people who involved in the initial development of the course content are John Dill, Khalil, Mike, Ben, Rob, Ken Zupin, and myself, and also Barbary, who from educational department, she has been a great mentor in developing this course content and the delivery strategies. So I'm really thankful to all of them who put some time and effort in developing the course what it is today. Now I was thinking really how to define Antikythera, how to really let you know what this course is about. Had this lecture be online, right now I'll be asking like each one of you, can you tell me what this course is? What do you think this course is? Why did you enroll yourself in this course really? Other than the fact that it might be one of the, compulsory courses that you have to take in the first year of your CET. Well, other than that, what are your expectations from this course? But now that everything is online, so really I had to think about how to introduce this course to you. So here I'm going to introduce this course with a visual. As the course is about spatial thinking, might as well introduce it using spatial visual graphics. So here on the screen, what you're seeing right now is a strand beast mechanism. designed and created by Theo Jensen. It's quite famous mechanism. Now, what you see is like, the sketch of the mechanism that evolved into simulation, and then there is the small one-leg prototype, then maybe which evolved into a all-leg prototype, but it's still small scale, then evolved into a full-scale prototype, full-scale final project model, physical model. So really, it covers these images or videos, small animated videos. They cover the whole design cycle that we will be covering in this course. So you may say any design that begins with an idea, there are constraints, there are variables, there is a problem statement. Based on that, you try to understand that problem by sketching solutions for it. The more you sketch, the more the problem state becomes more clear to you, and you get to understand it in a more deeper way. And so you start with sketches, you probably do some simulations, some calculations here and there, do some dimensioning. We'll be doing all of that as well. We'll be developing technical sketches, ideation sketches, moving on to technical sketches, and then moving on to simulation of to do some mathematical calculations, for example, gears and linkages, etc. Moving on to small scale prototypes, and then maybe big scale final prototype, presentation prototypes. So this, we will cover them all in IET 106. This is IET 106. Aren't you excited already? Well, I hope you are. Now here's the week by week breakdown for this course. And so we'll begin with a bit of a theory, moving on to more theory but with hands-on technical sketches. Moving on to projection theory, multi-view, how to create multi-view drawings. And moving on to model making, a little bit of model making here and there, then auxiliary view, cross-sectional views. We will also learn in between a software, a digital environment, like how to create designs, three-dimensional design in a digital virtual environment. We will be introducing the project somewhere around week 8, and that will go on all the way till the end of this course. There will be a final exam for this course, although I'm not quite sure the form of that final exam. However, there will be, whether it will be MCQs or whether it will be proctored, will be done using proctored software, online software or not, I'm not entirely sure yet. So the sooner I get to decide the details for the final exam, I will let you know. So for now, just know that there will be final exam. In what form would that be? Whether it's a sketching exam or MCQs, multiple choice exam, I'm not entirely sure yet. So we will be covering some solid modeling theories on the way. We will be talking about model making strategies, the physical model making, building strategies as well. So you may read through this course outline at your own time. It's very important that you are aware of what each week we are going to be learning. So why I'm making these online videos really? So the idea is that although the online lecture is the dedicated lecture time is Wednesday, 4:30, every Wednesday, every week on Wednesday at 4:30, the dedicated lecture time is that. But my expectation is that before you come for that lecture time, you watch this online video beforehand. And when you come for the lectures, that is when we really sit down together, have conversation about the concepts that have been explained in this lecture and this series of online virtual lectures, and then discuss those ideas, really dissect those concepts and reflect on them, build on top of each other's ideas, and get to know it a little bit better. Also, those during those online Wednesday meetings, we will also be doing some live activities. Those activities will be graded, so make sure your attendance is necessary for those sessions. Other than that, there will be labs, obviously, and each 20, you will be, the whole class is divided into 24 students, groups of 24 students. So you will be either E101, E102, E103, E104. E101 and E102 are the morning labs. And E101 is the moderator is Arafine, or the TA will be Arafine. E102 TA is Ali, and then E103 and E104 are the ones that are afternoon every Monday. So there's the labs are on Mondays, and our field will be E103's TAs, and Ali will be E104 TA. For the office hours, well, the best way to reach out to me will be to writing me an email. However, I will be making myself available online on a Zoom link that I will be sharing with you all later, on Mondays from 11:30 to 12:30. So that's my office hours. However, like I said, my preference will be that you send me an email and then we set up a time that works for both of us. For office hours for the TAs will be communicated as well by themselves, by the TAs, and they will announce those either through Canvas or during the labs. Any announcements regards to the syllabus or the course content, or any sort of lecture delay delivery issues will be communicated to you via email or Canvas announcements. Now, what is the assessment? Like, how are we going to grade you guys for the content we're going to teach you in this course? Well, there's lots of, like, each lab has lab activities, in-lab activities, as well as some homework assignments. Those will be comprised of 35% of your overall grade. Individual quizzes, there will be individual quizzes. There are 12 lectures. If I exclude this lecture, then there will be 11 lectures really in total. And after each lecture, there will be a small tiny quiz on Canvas. So when you are done listening to this lecture or the upcoming lecture, then go to Canvas. There will be a small tiny quiz. That quiz is a timed quiz, which means the only time you have to fill in the answers that most probably will be MCQs, true, false, or short answer questions, sort of a quiz. The only time you'll have you will have time to fill that quiz will be between the release of this video and the start of the lecture, which is when it's say 4:30, every Wednesday 4:30. So I will try to give you 1 week's time, or at least 4 days between that, so that you will have the quizzes will be locked between after at the beginning of the online lecture meeting time, which is Wednesday 4:30. So those small quizzes will be overall comprised of 20% of your grade. So make sure not only you listen to the entire lecture, you also do solve those quizzes. And so within those quizzes, please make sure that you do those individually. So once you start that quiz, there's no way that you can just end it. Once you start it, you have to finish, otherwise you lose the chance. So it's once time that can only be opened and done. Once you open that quiz, you have to do it right away. So make sure you're really ready when you want to um, start that quiz. Then there will be a software quiz, which is Onshape. I'll be telling you a little bit about Onshape later on. But we will be teaching you Onshape, and we will take a small quiz on that tool to see how well you are able to do certain tasks in that tool, and that will be 5% of your overall grade. The final project is comprised of 25% of the overall grade, so it's like quite heavy. So make sure you are well prepared for that. You can start thinking about the final project ideas right now, if you want to. Final exam will be 15%. Like I said, there will be a final exam for this course. However, I'm not entirely sure what form of that final exam will be, but there will be a final exam. So overall, if I were to divide the assessment for this course into how much is the individual work and how much is the group work, you'll see 75% of this course involves individual work and 25% involves group work. Yes, there are some bonus points, yes. And so what is going to happen is that I'm going to, there are 12 lectures in this course. And within those lectures, there are going to be 3 Easter eggs hidden in those lectures. And the person who's going to find those hidden eggs, those are not like literally they're those going to be like a link to a certain website where there will be some sort of a puzzle that you need to solve, a special thinking challenge that you will be solving on your own. Make sure you don't share with anybody, because anyone who solves that puzzle the first will get 3 bonus points for each egg. So hypothetically, or there's a chance that each one of you has a chance to have 9 bonus points. So 3 eggs, 3 points each, 9 points in total. However, it is possible that not all 3 eggs are going to be, discovered by the same person. So it is possible that person A discovers the egg A, and the person B discovers egg C. So whatever the case, whoever discovers it first and solves the puzzle first will receive 3 bonus points. And how will I know who has solved it? So once you solve that puzzle, you really have to start a discussion. I will open up discussions for each Easter egg, and you have to write the answer to that puzzle. And those puzzles will be open till the end of this course, so whoever has the first correct answer will get those bonus points. So happy hunting! So that was all about bonus points. Now a few logistic issues for the course. We have to be really aware of what to find, where to find, when to find. So really the whole course content will always be posted on this website, which is www.sfu.ca/T106. So make sure this website is among your bookmarked website. You'll be visiting it a lot. All lectures, like including this lecture, visual lectures, all lectures will be posted there. All lecture slides will be posted there. All sort of lab assignments, what is the deadlines, the expectations, what is expected of you to do as a homework, as an in-lab activity, will be posted there. The only thing that you will need to go on Canvas would be to submit your work. So almost all of those submissions are going to be digital submissions. So all sort of digital submission, even if it is a hand drawing, even if it is a digital drawing, that still will have to be submitted online on Canvas. So it has to be submitted digitally. So what you need is a really good scanner at home. That I'm telling you in very advance. You will need a good scanner, if not the physical scanner, but if you have like a good app, Scannable or any other, there are many scanning apps that you can find online. I'm sure you are much more aware of all of this than myself. So yeah, just find a good scanning app and install them in your mobile, and then make sure that you do. We will not, I'm gonna tell you one more, like once and for all, we will not accept those very low quality, low resolution images. Please, you are in university, and this is the whole idea of going digital, working from home, homeschooling, like attending university from home. You have to be very aware of how to take pictures or how to take good scans of your homework. So Google it, find out. If you are unable to, if you need help, reach out to myself or your TA, and we will help you to figure out the scanning mechanisms. So all the digital submissions are going to be on Canvas, and then any announcement, any changes in the syllabus or anything that is upcoming will be shared with you via email or Canvas announcements. So check your email often, like the SFU email. Now here's the book for this course that you will be needing, and I would suggest buying either an e-copy for it or asking for this book to be delivered. This book is going to be very handy because we will be using lots of problems from the book, as well as you will be assigned weekly readings from the book. So make sure you do have this book handy, whether in the digital version, like a digital copy or a physical copy. Now, I'm sure you all are aware of online, etiquettes or online class netiquettes, I must say. You have done it in spring, partially in spring and all summer, and so this is fall, so you're already pro in it. However, it's important for me to mention at the beginning of the course that there are a few expectations. Being it a virtual online environment, there are a few expectations that we do expect you to be very respectful of other fellow members' feelings. You have to be at there. This is online interactive platform, but there is zero tolerance policy for hateful language or any inappropriate comments. Make sure you are very aware of that. You are communicating online, so the words that you write, think before you write, and when you write, read it multiple times so that it's very transparent, very clear. When you're communicating through messages, make sure you're not screaming in your message. All caps sounds like really screaming, so make sure you're very vigilant of you are typing a message. It is to be read by 100 people at the same time, so make sure you are aware, you're kind, you're appropriate, your language is clear, because many times that's what happens. Most of the miscommunication happens when you are writing something and it is in an online environment, and the other person who's reading that doesn't interpret it the way it is written. So make sure your written comments, written feedback, written communication, discussion points are very clear, concise, and transparent in terms of their meaning. So that's about online classroom etiquette. Now for supplies, yes, very important. So for this course, throughout this course, we'll be needing some office supplies. So of course you'll be needing pencils, erasers, and pen. That's no question. You have to have a pencil with you all the time. When you are in the lecture, when you are in the lab, you have to have a pencil, a set of pencils, not only just one pencil, a set of pencils, erasers, sharpeners, as well as sketching papers, plain sketching papers, like plain, no ruled lines on it, just plain sketching papers. And then from week 2 onwards, this is week 1, week 2 onwards, we will be asking you to start bringing grid papers. So there are 2 kinds of grid papers we'll be asking you to bring. One is the square grid paper, and the template for the square grid paper is available on the course website. And the other one is perspective grid paper, and the template for the perspective grid is also available on the course website. So either you can download those templates and print them, or there are, I know for the fact that on Staples or I think Walmart, there are some grid books available, like a book with grid papers in it. Feel free to buy that if you want to. But you definitely will be needing around like 20 to 30 grid papers each for perspective and square. Now, other than that, you will be needing cardboard. So my go-to place for cardboard is definitely Dollar Store. Down, it's cheap, it's easy, it's convenient. You know where it is. Just go there, buy some cardboards. Single ply is okay. Corrugated cardboard sheets is the one I'm talking about. So for now, I foresee maybe you'll be needing 2 or 3 cardboards. That's all you'll be needing. Other than that, you will be needing box cutter, X-Acto knife or box cutter. Choose one, any one of them. Scissors you might already have at home, so you don't have to worry about that. We might not actually use them, but just in case. And steel rulers, and the most important thing, the cutting board. So we will be needing those things. Make sure you go through this supply list. I will be emailing this supply list as well, just in case. So be prepared, you will be needing these items. Yes, so for the software, many of you have asked me questions like, are we using SolidWorks? What kind of software we need to download in a machine, or machines are not strong enough, like memory wise and computation wise, processing power isn't strong. So, well, I have a good news for you. We have 2 software that we envision to use in this course, and both of them are cloud based. So you don't have to download anything. So one of them is Onshape. Onshape is an online cloud based tool, and myself and the TAs are going to be teaching this tool for the first time. So hopefully it will be a smooth transition from SolidWorks to Onshape. It's very similar, and so we are glad that we were able to get a license for it. You don't have to buy it. It's the educational version is free. You don't have to buy anything. All you have to do is just create an account and start using. And collaboration is really easy. You just need to share the link with your TAs and myself or your group members, and you're able to collaborate on Onshape. Very easy to use. We will give you separate lectures on how to use Onshape. There is a whole series of activities and lesson plans on Onshape. Now, the second software that we'll be using in our lab 1, which is Monday, September 14th, we will be using Mechabricks, which is an online digital Lego software, and we have a small challenge that the solution for the challenge involves you to develop a Lego model. And so we'll be using Mechabricks. So that also is an online cloud-based tool. So far we have decided that we are going to use Mechabricks. However, fingers crossed, there is a chance that we right now we are struggling to decide between Mechabricks and there's another one, Bricklink Studio. So whichever we decide, we will send an email out. So far Mechabricks is the one that we are going ahead with. In case we change our decision, we will let you know in advance. Both Mechabricks and the Bricklinks are available online. So they're both online and they're both free, and they both are for Windows and Mac, where they're available for both platforms. There you go. So it's really easy. So it's just a matter of few operations that we're looking at the comparison between Mechabrick and the Bricklink. But the sooner we decide, we'll let you know. You don't have to worry about anything, and we'll teach you how to use the software. The good news that I was saying is that you don't have to worry about your computer being not strong enough or being not equipped with heavy software. So these are very lightweight software. Projects. So this course is really divided into 4 projects. The first project that we're going to begin with a gimbal exercise. And what is a gimbal? We'll talk about it in few minutes. The first project is a week-long project. It will be introduced to you today, and you will be doing this in the labs along with your TAs. TAs are going to walk you through, and then you'll be creating a model. So the second project is a joinery exercise that will involve some sort of cardboard physical model making activity, and that is also 1 week long project. So it'll be very fun as well. The third is a linkage mechanism project that will involve working on a digital model on shape, and then you will be working on like mates and assemblies, how to create a linkage mechanism. And the fourth and the final project is called a beautiful machine, and this is the final project for this course. And I'm very excited to start that project. I love that project, and I'm sure you all are gonna love it. So it is not a week long, it's 4 to 5 weeks long project, just a mega project. So what are we going to do in the labs other than the labs that we are doing the project? So in almost all of the labs are kind of like surrounding around the same concepts of which I was talking about, the whole design process. So some of the labs are targeted towards sketching activities, others are more focused on digital model making, and some of them are involved lots of physical active model making. However, we will be touching each one. Some of the labs have all of these components, and some of them are focusing on one component at a time. So it's really, everything is really interactive and engaging. Content is really interactive and engaging. I hope you will have fun with it. Yeah, so it is important to mention about the plagiarism and copyright, because this is the design course, and there is a certain, like, lots of design activities. The final project as well as the mini project as well involve designing and creative solutions. And then this course also has some sort of writing element into it. So keeping this in mind, it is important to mention plagiarism and copyright policies. So if you're not aware of what a plagiarism is and what are the penalties for it, please do go on Canvas, and there's the module on plagiarism. Be aware that if we find somebody copying some other student's work, they both will be penalized, and there are severe penalties for it. So please, I'll say it again, please don't go through that route of copying any of your friends or any of your seniors' work. Thank you. I don't want, this is the awkward conversation. I don't want to stress it enough, and I'll mention it just once, and I'll just trust you with not doing it. Please know that if you do copy, we will know. Yeah. How? I won't tell you how, but we will know. So yeah, moving on. Like I said, we have lots of writing element, like the writing assignments as well. Most of those writing involves reflective piece of writing. And so one thing that we are not going to be focusing on, this is not a writing course, which means we're not going to be focusing on teaching you how to write well. So we expect you to write well on your own, and what we are going to focus on in the writing assignments are going to be the ideas, the concepts that you share with us. So make sure your ideas, you're very elaborate, concise, and clear in the ideas that you write in those assignments. And the more clear, the more accurate, the more concise you are, the better grades you're going to be getting. So that too as well, I'm going to be saying in the beginning of the course, and I expect you to really understand this, and so that I don't have to repeat it. Yeah, so moving on. Now, let's begin the formal lecture. And today's lecture is going to be about spatial thinking. As the course name is. So what really is spatial thinking, and how do we communicate? How, when we think spatially, how do we think spatially really, and how can we communicate what we are thinking? So we're going to talk a little bit about a theories or concept behind what is a space, and what is the spatial reasoning, what are the processes involved in it. We are also going to touch a little bit about role of representations in spatial thinking, and the importance of spatial thinking and communicating. And one thing that is really important to note here is that how do we differentiate spatial thinking from other modes of thinking or communicating? So before we really dig into the formal definition, one thing that you'll note is that spatial thinking is a very broad topic, and lately many of the domains have started talking about spatial thinking within their domain, within their domain knowledge. So for example, jobs in entertainment. Have you ever watched an animation movie? Have you? Do you see how different characters, they interact with each other? How much aware of the animator has to be of the spaces, of the spatial configuration, the complexities of how far, how deep, how near, how close, how repetitive certain things have to be, the location, size, positioning, orientation, scale, magnitude, like closeness, all of that. They have to be aware of all of these things in order to appropriately design a single scene in an animation movie. So it really is deep into this entertainment industry. The spatial, having to have spatial thinking will get you across that, get really good jobs in entertainment. Then if you look at design field, then you'll notice, you have to have spatial thinking, whether you are industrial designer, engineer, really architecture. I am an architect. I know how much important it is to know, to be aware of spatial concepts and be proficient in reasoning, in spatial reasoning processes. Then in business, really, yes, you have to be aware of your how to target your audience, how to reach out to them, what kind of emotions to evoke, and then how do you present your product, for example, which angles to use, all sort of those things. And science, in physics, medicine, especially medicine, those doctors, when they do surgeries or when they're, this whole body, we are spatially embodied, right? So we have our components in our body are certain, there are certain there are certain ways the way they move, there are certain affordances, there are certain complexities in terms of their positioning, in terms of their orientation. So really have to be, in medicine, you have to be aware of all of those things, and biology and engineering, right? And then so really, you may ask this question, doesn't then it means the spatial thinking is in every field? Well, yeah, you're right. It is in everything, really. If you can develop this conscious awareness towards spatial concepts and spatial reasoning methods and processes, then you are in the right track, in the right track towards success, really. Okay, so let's look at examples. What I said, this spatial thinking is used in all of these fields, but let's see. So here's an example of a game, a virtual game, a virtual environment. Really, if you are an artificial and reality, virtual reality, you have to be aware of your spatial surroundings, physical surroundings as well as virtual surroundings. Then so games are really rich in terms of you have to have spatial cognition in order to perform well in games. All of you must know, those who are gamers right there listening to me must know it better than I do. And then this is one of my favorite hero movie. If you look at this, like, you know, people who have designed those scenes, people who does this for a living, they have to be very good at those spatial concepts in order to design a certain animation in a well so that it is well received by the audience. So everything, lighting, shadows, position of the characters, really everything. Here's the game, Halo 3. I'm sure most of you have played it. If you look at those players, their positioning, how to target.
The multiplayer, everything.
While you're working on the project, the bar is sort of a moving target. It can be intimidating for sure. Typically, my morning starts with me weeping at my desk for about 30 minutes, and then I get to work. Coming up with these scenarios that people play over and over again. Now, how can we rethink that and create something that's new and interesting? We started getting more into these asymmetrical maps. It's offense versus defense, where that's a choke point that you want to hold. And I think high ground is an example of that. Some of the specific things that we tried out were have a wall that you have to get past. That sort of defined whether you won or lost the game.
Then we stuck some towers in, and we put AI gunners on all the towers. So as you're running up the hill, you're just getting tagged by all these AI guys. That's the direction that we went. We're like, whoa, that's way too hard.
In this version, the wall is actually perpendicular to the hill. And in the final version of High Ground, that wall has been rotated 45 degrees because it had two turrets up here as well as two turrets in the other tower. So there was a lot of firepower coming down on the hill. That got all simplified into one turret actually right above the gate, which we thought that was critical to the attack. It's pretty obvious to us when we started working on these maps that they have to be fun for the 100th and the 200th and the 1000th time.
You weren't figuring out the switches and the doors?
Yeah, the closer, like you want to walk up and like watching people run through your map challenges a lot of the assumptions you made about it. Like, oh, I think people will use this hill for sniping, and then no one uses it. Then you get great comments like, this map sucks. I hate this spot. I hate you.
A lot of the time that we spend on these levels are in the details, making sure that the run to a weapon is equal for different areas, getting the distances right for flag captures.
Because we make such an effort to place titled objects in a level, like the waterfall, the bridge, the porta potty, people can see the flag is down by the porta potty. That immediately helps with that social aspect.
Tell about the porta potty. One of the things that we talked about in pre-production was player movement, and that's where the man cannon comes in. There's different ways to move the player around the map.
In Halo 1 and Halo 2, we had these teleporters. Although it was a great way to get around quickly, it didn't provide as much inherent danger as the man cannon does. There's almost nothing more rewarding than sniping a guy out of the air and man cannoning across the map.
So you see what I'm talking about. You have to be at another level of, you have to be a really pro spatial thinker to design those, even to play those things, you have to be a really good spatial thinker. But to design these things, you have to unlock other levels of spatial thinking. So yeah, so here's another example in science, like how moon orbits around Earth and the Earth orbits around Sun. Now, can you trace the path what moon makes around Sun? So watch it. What a beautiful motion right there. if I were to ask you to draw it without looking at this video, I'm sure many of you might have gotten it wrong. Now that you've seen it, you will know how will they do it. It's beautiful. And this is wonderful. I think the first one was how Earth revolves around, orbits around the sun, the motion. So that was the path of the Earth, planet Earth, and this one was the moon. The human body, like I was talking earlier, is full of, complex systems. There are many components in there that you have to be really aware of where each one of them exists, which is why these are very famous drawings from Leonardo and Da Vinci, who drew those drawings in order to understand human anatomy and how each thing relate to the other things. So it's a huge study, like just studying that, the spatial configuration in a human body is a huge topic of its own. It requires lots of deep reasoning and spatial cognition. Sports are another level of having to have. You cannot play well until you have achieved a certain level of spatial cognition. That was unbelievable.
Two men overboard. There's the rescue boat right away. And this goes to the safety aspect. Everything really has been thought of when it comes to the safety of the sailors. Well, they went around the mark and absolutely stuffed the bows for some reason. And you heard Dean Barker at the last second say, "Big puff here, you guys." And look at the damage. Oh, we're going to have to join pretty soon, guys. What a turn of events when the Italians basically sitting still in the water. 1.5 more lanes for New Zealand, and tragedy strikes. Now both men have been accounted for. You see the blue and the red flashing lights on their life preservers. They would be scooped up by the rescue boat, but now they see them with damage and a 9-man crew. Well, it looks like the trampoline ripped away when the wave hit them. It's Chris Ward and Rob Waddell, two of the big grinders. And just your position, you're going to go. With that amount of water force, you're going to go if it's your time to go. These are the two biggest, strongest guys I've ever met. And they get washed over the side. It looked like the fairing was broken loose. The fairing broke loose, and that actually tore part of the trampoline away. Oh my goodness. Listen, look at this one. Fortunately, these guys, Todd, are in good shape. No question about it. Here is a gate number 3. Can you take us through what went wrong? Because the acceleration was amazing.
Oh.
This all has to do with the
Look at that.
the bows went down, the bows didn't pop up. Deep Barker looking back,
That's the spun white puck. This is what it means.
disaster. Oh my goodness, this could nobody's hurt. Watch this. Here is on board. Anybody thinks this is for the fan part, you've just witnessed modern America's Cup. Incredible. And the damage on the front end, as we look at it one more time, is the speed. I mean, they put that thing 5-6 feet underwater. You can see the damage right away on the right-hand side by the dagger board. As it shouldn't be a structural problem. It's probably just a wind fairing. Fortunately, those two guys are in good shape.
Well, yeah, it is hard. Here's another one. Look at that, skiing, our favorite. He's gonna do a flip. Whoa. How much calculations in your head you must have to do in order to do that, in order to land back on your feet. Wonderful. And human mind, it does all these wonderful things without knowing that we do it in every single day. We use our spatial thinking. We live in a spatial environment. We are born with spatial abilities. How can we really excel those skills is what we are talking about in this course. And how can we not only just excel in spatial thinking, but also reasoning and then communicating is what we're going to be covering in this course. Now here's a very interesting spatial thinking problem statement, and that how researchers figured it out. What you see on your screen is a very, very old mechanism that scientists found on a shipwreck, probably like it's dates back to 100 BC or something. And so this is Antikythera Mechanism. And what does it really do, and how did they figure it out like this is Antikythera Mechanism? So what they did is they took some x-rays for this Antikythera Mechanism from different angles, from the top, from the side. Based on those x-rays, they started making drawings. What they see, they started drawing technical drawings, like how big the dials were. There are multiple, that seems like there are multiple dials and the layers and layers of those dials. Once they figured out and drew drawings from different angles, they started making digital model for those gears and everything. And it turned out it was a very complex mechanism with layers and layers of gears. And if you read through this article, the article is available online on the website. If you read through the article, you will know that this mechanism was used to predict the positions of the planets and the suns and moons, and to predict when would they meet a game, like to predict the positions so that they can be more aware of their solar systems. So here's the video for Antikythera Mechanism. It's a very interesting video. I love it. So this is the main dial, and there's a gear that rotates this big dial, and there's multiple sets of gears underneath it. Some of them are solar, some are lunar. Different planets will come. How complex. And there's the back dial with the needles and everything. And then as the gears move, once it's actuated, it will predict, once you put the current date or something, it will predict where each and every planet would be or should be at a certain date and time. The scientists wouldn't have figured out what this mechanism was and what it was built for had they had not the ability to dissect it all, the complexity of it, and how were they able to do it? Yes, you guessed it right, using spatial thinking skills. Beautiful mechanism. each needle represents a certain planet, and once you put a date and time, like I said, it will tell you where each of those planets will be at a certain date and time. Wonderful. Moving on, architecture. Well, that's not a surprise that in architecture we need tons and tons of spatial thinking powers in order to solve complex spatial problems and issues. What you see on the screen is an aviation museum, and you'll think it wouldn't involve spatial thinking. Well, it will, and it does, lots and lots of them. And the objects in this kind of problem are huge planes. So you not only have to think about human level spatial thinking, but also how the human are going to maneuver, navigate, or find their paths, or move around those big mega planes objects. So you have to think at different levels from different point of views. How to place those planes is one question. How to how to do the circulation for humans in those museums, and how, if an object is to be moved, how that object is going to be moved within a museum. So there are many levels of spatial thinking that is needed and required to design something like an aviation museum, for example, and any other, not just aviation museum. Here's the airport designed by Norman Foster's and Partners. Norman Foster's and Partners, the name of the architect is Norman Foster. Sorry about that. So Foster's and Partners, it's a Beijing airport. Here are different, you will think that it might come easy. It is not easy to design a building of that mega scale and be able to do it perfectly. To the precision level is so high, and so you have to have lots of spatial thinking, not only just powers but also tools to communicate your spatial thinking processes. Here's an image when it was built, like during building, and even building those things, not only just designing, building, the constructing those things involve lots of spatial thinking as well. Engineering, yes. Here's how an engine is built. Here goes the belt. Beautiful animation. Here's when it is running. A single piston at a time. Wow, beautiful animation. The gas is filled in. Wonderful. Then of course our abilities to navigate in this world. Like each one of us have used maps, right? We all are a fan of Google Maps. Some of us used Apple Maps. So yeah, so navigating our path, navigating our way, through this world within different configuration, different cities, different, even in a single building or even within a home, involves lots of awareness as to where spatially orient ourselves and be just vigilant of where everything exists and how you can maneuver yourself between those objects. Involves lots of spatial thinking. There you go. So we all have experienced it, but the thing is the level. How can we excel in those spatial thinking is what varies from person to person. So before we talk about anything further about spatial thinking, we really want to make a distinction as, so we know that spatial thinking exists in it's across domains. But what are the other modes of thinking? If spatial thinking is so important, then what are the others? Just so that we can compare and get to know them. So there are many other modes of thinking. Some of them involve verbal, voice. Some of them involve written communication. Some of them involve logical statements or objects, mathematical communication, statistical communication. Now, they can be distinguished in terms of their representations. So how they're represented is really different. And each one of has their own, reasoning system. For example, in verbal communication, we use linguistic and we use symbols, linguistic symbols. Mathematics, we use symbols, mathematical symbols, and reasoning systems are like, for example, logical, algebra, calculus, etc. Now, let's take an example of comparing different modes of thinking. Now, here's a verbal statement. Now, you have to really tell me what the answer is. So when I tell you, what do we call a curve that is traced by a point that moves so that its distance from a given point is constant? Do you know the answer to that question? Well, let me try one more time. Now I'm going to use another mode of thinking now. This is a circle. It is a circle, and that is a spatial language. When you draw a circle, immediately you know that it's a circle. Whereas the verbal communication, it takes you some certain seconds or milliseconds to really get, what the statement asks for as a result. Now, another mode of communication another mode of thinking for the same object, which is a circle, would be mathematical language. For example, it is x squared plus y squared is equals to r squared. If somebody says, here is x squared, y squared plus y squared is equals to r squared, what is it? Well, it is a circle. Yes, it also represents a circle. However, we cannot immediately relate to that equation to a circle. So it takes time and effort and learning. So spatial thinking is something that comes really deep in our learning because we are spatially evolved human beings, which is why it is really comes in our nature to think spatially. which is why that is our strongest asset. And so it is one thing that we have just discovered is that it is accessible to everyone. However, the degree at which it is accessible varies from person to person. Some people are more strong spatial thinker than the others. However, knowing that some people are stronger than the others, still I can guarantee you 100% this is something that can be learned. So it's not something that you're born with. Yes, you're born with some spatial knowledge, some spatial reasoning skills, some spatial awareness, some spatial cognition. However, you can learn it over time to really excel in those skills. So there are three important elements of spatial thinking. One is called concept of space, and tools of representations, and the process of reasoning. Now we'll touch all of them one by one. Concept of space really involves knowing to getting to there are multiple components within the concept of space. Like for example, there are objects within a space, how they are positioned within a space, how they interact with each other. Getting to know the spatial configuration is called concept of space. You have to have developed an understanding of a space. Now, tools of representations is when you have developed an understanding of a space and you want to, for example, I say that in the room, in your bedroom, you have a bed and you have a study table. Now we're gonna have another, another study table in your bedroom. Let's say that's the challenge. We are going to place another study table in your bedroom. Now you know the spatial configuration of your existing bedroom. Now you have to change it. You have to change it to make room for another study table. Now what you have to do, you have to think. Your brain is suddenly right there is going to start making in the mind. You're going to start reasoning out, like if I move my bed, if I move the previous study table which exists in your bedroom in a certain way, how can I make room? So your mind is doing calculation, what would be the best position, orientation, placement, distance of the study table that is intended to be placed. Now once you have that, then you need a way to communicate your idea. So one way is verbal, that you verbally explain, but you cannot really talk to yourself. Well, some of us can, but not always that works. So, but what best would be you take a piece of paper and a pencil and you start sketching, you start drawing, right? And that is that's one way of representation. So there are different tools, different representation tools, representation strategies within each tool, and so we will cover those tools of representations in this course. And like I said, one of those representation tools is sketching, so we'll cover sketching as well as others as well. And then the process of reasoning would really involve, like for example, in your mind, if you do mental rotation of the study table in a certain way, how if you move the bed in your head, if you move the bed from one direction to the another direction, then can you foresee a certain space being available for another object to be placed at? So those are the reasoning things that you have to do. The more you do it, the more you get, your mind gets trained to do it often without any help or external help. So today we're going to be talking about concept of space. There are two things, like I said, concept of space, tools of representation, and spatial reasoning. Now within tools of representation, we're going to start covering from week 2 onwards, and really we will keep covering that onwards till the end of this course. But let's talk a little bit about the theory, the concept of space, and the reasonings behind it, like processes of reasoning. So that's the topic for today. Within, how do we define space, and how can we develop a concept of a space? Within the concept of space, there are 3 further categories, or you may say 3 further steps that you can divide it in the concept of space into. The first one is objects. So you have to be really aware of what objects are in such. You have to identify when you are developing a concept of a space. You have to do is identify the objects in that space. The second one is identify the space, which means how those objects relate to each other. And I'll talk further into each of those, what this means. And the third one is operation. Like if you move one object, what impact it will make on the rest of the objects. So are they like physically connected? What kind of operations I can perform on one, and how will it impact the rest? Now let's dig deep into objects, spaces, and operations one by one. For example, you are asked to design a living room lamp. So what would you really be doing? If I were to ask a living room lamp, most probably what will I do is, something that will hold that lamp, a sort of a rod. It is a living room lamp. Most probably it may have like some sort of a mechanism to get directional light. Not necessarily every living room needs a directional light. However, you may have a directional light, and then there could be the wire that will be connected, and a plug that will be connected to a certain external electrical socket. Now, what do you really see when you are designing? Let's say this is my living room lamp. What do you see here really? The components, the objects, and then you have a base here, right? You have some sort of a cord here. You have a weight here. This weight is to keep the the lamp in a certain position. There is going to be a pivot, a hinge, you may call, and then there is a shade, and inside the shade there is a bulb or a lighting device, and there's some indication of where the light is coming from. Now there could be many other things. For example, the height could be adjustable in which means this connecting rod, let me call it rod. This rod could be telescopic rod where one half of it will slide into the other half. So these are the details. These are the objects of a lamp. The components, the objects. So now, if you have done a lamp of your own, now I'll ask you, what words did you use? Like myself, I have used base, rod, shade, hinge, weight, cord. These are the words that I've used. What drawings have you made in order to convey the idea? So for myself, the drawing that I've made is sort of like an elevational view sort of ideation. It's a very preliminary sketch, and it is in elevation, so you make it say elevational preliminary sketch. What are the parts of your lamp? So there are different parts, like I named them already. What measurements have I done it? So I haven't done anything at all, but you may see that when you are designing something, it is very handy to put in the measurements as well, just so that there is some indication of how how high the lamp is, how wide the base is going to be, and how high the base is going to be, maybe perhaps how much deep it could go, if it is telescopic, how high could it go beyond a certain height, and then what is the degree of tilt that you could achieve through this. So these are all the things, affordances that this lamp could have, and these are additional information. The more information you add, the more clearer the drawing gets, and the ideation process, the more you do it, the more clear the problem or the solution becomes. And then how many have you made these? So I have only made one. So but when the ideation process really begins, you not only you never make only one solution, you make multiple, at least 3 to 4 solutions, and then it could go beyond hundreds and thousands, because we have the computational power now to create like thousands of variations of a single design. So yeah, so you make at least, if you're doing manually, at least 3 to 4 manual variations to see which one is the works best and looks the best. And then how did your lamp change, or would it work? So in that case, this indication of lighting tells us how it works. There's this socket external connector that will connect to the electrical outlet, so that also gives an indication of how it will be plugged in, where would the light come out, if there's telescopic rod, how high would it go versus how low could it go. So these are the things that you really have to embed in your communication, as well as in your reasoning process, in your spatial thinking. Now, keeping all of this in mind, the object, how do we define of an object within a space, concept of a space? How do we define? So keeping the example of the lamp that I just created, how do we define objects? Well, the objects vary. One thing that you need to know is that object within a concept of space, the definition of an object varies from domain to domain. So in case of a lamp, the objects were base, rod, extended rod, shade, perhaps holder for the bulb. However, in biology, these could be genes, cell, protein, biodata, for example. And it varies as the domain changes, the object identification of the object, the definition of the object, the name of the object changes. And objects obviously are relatable to others, so you may think how they relate to each other. Now, space. Space allows us to capture the fundamental spatial properties of objects. So one common concept of space is that it is based on dimensionality and uses a dimensional system. So by, for example, you may think of it as for example, we can think of objects as in instances of a point, which is a one-dimensional space, or a line, again a one-dimensional space because it can only move in one dimension, or a planar area, which is a two-dimensional space, or a three-dimensional volumetric object which exists in a three-dimensional space. So dimensionality is really important when we are talking about space within a concept of space. And also, space can be defined in terms of distance, in terms of angle, in terms of direction, closeness, apartness, sequence, order, connection, linkages. So this is how we define space. How do we define object is by its name, by its size, by its own properties. For example, the width, height, all the volumetric properties, by its density, by its look and feel, like how what is the feeling of a touch feeling, like what is the surface properties of it. Those are definitions for object. Whereas for definition of space is distances, orientation, the positioning, angles, and like I said, sequence and order, linkages and separation connections. And so the structural properties of the objects also are included in the space arrangement. For example, density, dispersion, shape, position. Those are the ones that will impact or will interfere, or will the way the space is arranged is going to be dependent on the properties of the object, like I said. Now, for when we talk about space, then representation of that space is super important to know. So for now, there are many ways you can have a space represented, and the very common way to represent a space is through Cartesian, through coordinate systems. And there are multiple coordinate systems, by the way. The most common ones are, the first one is Cartesian, coordinate system. And really, what is Cartesian coordinate system is that if you have a point within a space, you define, so there is 3, there's an x-axis, there's y-axis, and there is z-axis. And what you do is you define, for example, you have a point right here within a space, right here, this is the point. How do you define this point is you position this point within a three-dimensional space by seeing its distance So really, this point right here is defined with its x value, with its y value, and z value. So this point, let's say this is the point A, will be defined as x, y, and z, 3 values right there. Now the another system, coordinate system, which is called cylindrical coordinate system. And the third one is called spherical. Now, how do we define an object, a position, like a space within using cylindrical coordinate system? Is you have once again the same space with axes. So this is x-axis, this is y-axis, this is z-axis. So once again, if there's a point in space right here, once again it's the same point A, how would you define its position using cylindrical coordinate system? Is you will define the position of that point within a space such that you will see how far it is. For example, from here, so this is x, and then you will define an angle theta of how far it is from the x-axis, this theta, and then how high it is on the z-axis, which will be defined by height. So this point A using cylindrical coordinates will be defined as its, so x is the radius, really is the r value. So r, theta, and h. So the 3 numbers are r, theta, and h. In this one as well, This is called x, however, is the same one as that. So y is the same one as that one. So really is the radius of it. Now the third one is called spherical coordinate system. How do we define a position of a point using spherical coordinate system is, once again, I'll have the same axes, x, y, and z, and then defining a point A once again. Here, how will we define is using spherical coordinates is if the point exists right here on the, if you transition it onto the planar surface, it will exist right here. Then we will first draw a line right here, then the angle. So just do it one more time very carefully. So the angle of that, how far it is, which once again is theta, and then we will also have another angle that will define how far it is from z-axis, and that will be phi, and then the height of obviously the same is h. So in this case, point A is defined by 2 angular values and 1 height value. So it will be theta, phi, and h, the height. Or actually, it would be r. No, yes. So it would be r. H we won't need it because once we know how far it is from the point of origin, so r value, once we know that, and then the theta, and then how high it has to go, like because we have the phi value, how high it is has to go from this to this is actually the negative of this. So if you subtract the 90 from 90, we'll get it. So this, instead of this h, this is r. So that's how the spherical coordinate system works. So just to, summarize, using Cartesian coordinate system, a point A is defined by 3 numbers, x, y, z, the same point, same position, but it is defined using cylindrical coordinates, as point A will be defined as its value radius r, theta, which is the value from x-axis towards how far away the angle is, and then the height value, and the same point defined using spherical coordinates by 3 numbers. One of the number is the r, same as this, which is the radius, and the second one is the theta, which is again the same one as in cylindrical, and the third one is the phi, which is another angle, that is the vertical angle. So these are the 3 different ways to define a coordinate system, to represent, sorry, not to define, to represent a space using a coordinate system. Now, objects within a space have a location. They have certain, for example, that location can be defined with respect to the absolute origin or a model origin. So it really depends on, like, it's a local coordinate system, so location has to be defined using a coordinate system, one of these coordinate system, and using some origin. So that could be like a global origin or a local origin or model origin. So it depends on what is that origin value from which you are defining the location of the object, the distance of the object. So once again, the distance of the object can be defined from another object or from the origin or from certain other coordinate system. Then again, size, once again, size is also defined respective to the other, whether it's larger than the other object, same size, double the size, half the size, or with respect to the coordinate system, you define the size of the object. Then the shape as well, and defining the boundaries, direction, and orientation. So that's how you define an object within a space. You have to have an understanding of the space in order to define the object within that space. So the last one is operations, and operations really comes down to how those objects within a certain definition of the space, how they interact with each other, what kind of operations you can perform on them. Can you perform translation, which is the motion, like linear motion movement? Can you perform translational motions on them? Can you perform rotational motion of them on them? And once you move or perform or apply a certain force or gravity on one object, how would the other objects react to that? And so that also involves some sort of process of reasoning, because when you orient a certain object in a different way, how would it look? For example, if you're looking at this clicker from the front, can you imagine what it might look like from the back? It does involve some sort of mental rotation. However, if I show you this, marker, and if I ask you to mentally rotate it, you know what to expect. It will look exactly the same from the front and the back. So those are the things, like you can, if you able to mentally orient objects, that will involve spatial reasoning. But operations really are can be, and it does involve lots of reasoning within your mind, and then doing it on your paper. Is how, when you see an object, can you figure it out how it is functioning, and can you in your mind, and then on your representation on the tool, the sketch, or the digital model, can you represent that orientation or the translation or the operation happening, and what will be the resultant of it. Now, remember the Antikythera Museum, Antikythera Mechanism? Now, that was a perfect example of having to have objects positioned in a certain coordinate system, in a system, and then be able to imagine moving one, how would the other move with respect to that. And that was all based on those reasoning processes. So if I move this gear, how will the other one move, and how would it impact the overall dial, or the needles on the top. And so that's the perfect example of the whole process, the reasoning process, and developing a concept of a space. So to summarize, the three concepts within a concept of space, or three the points that you have to consider whenever you are dissecting or you are designing a new space, then you have to really consider about what are the objects within those space, what are the properties of those objects, and then what is the space within how do you define that space within which those objects exist, and how they relate to each other within that space. So really the distances, orientation, position, location, sizes, all of that comes in that. And then the third and the final is operation. Have you apply any rotational or translational or any action on those objects that exist in a certain space? If you apply operations on it, how would they react, and how would they interact, and how would they impact the overall system within which they exist? So three things: objects, space, and operations. Now let's really apply these concepts of this learning about object, space, and operations on a gimbal system. Now for those of you who really don't know what a gimbal is, let me define it. A gimbal really is a mechanism that has rings that are pivoted inside each other, such that each ring spins or rotates around an alternate axis. So for example, if one ring is rotating around x-axis, the other one will rotate around y-axis, and the one inside will again rotate around x, and then so on and so forth. So here's a very good example of what a gimbal might be used in. So here, mostly, have you seen cameras? Like you must have seen movies. You see movies all the time. We all see movies all the time. And have you, like, the camera has to be operated by a single cameraman, or a person who is holding the camera. Now, how do you think that the camera per man is still moving, but the camera still records videos like as if it's stable, it's stationary? So those cameras are installed on top of camera holders that have gimbal system installed into it. So here's an example of what it might look like a handheld camera holder. Here's a very complex double handheld camera holder. No matter how complex the machinery is, the gimbal mechanism itself is very simple, very small. So it really is sets of rings installed inside each other with pivoted across within each other such that they all spin on an alternate axis, one after the other. So let's draw a gimbal. So a gimbal really is a ring. So let me just start a ring here. It's a ring, outer ring that is pivoted around two edges that rest on some sort of a support. So in this case, there are two supports here, and the supports themselves rest on a base. Now, nothing in this world exists really on a single line, so just for the purposes of explanation, let me make a double line. So here's the base. Now let me make the ring in the double line as well for consistency purposes. Now here are the two pivots right here. The pivots are such that they're holding the outer ring around 2 points and edges. Let me just label it. This is the outer ring. Here are the pivots or hinges, you may call them. Here's the support, vertical supports, and here's the base. Now, the one ring is installed. Now the second ring will be installed right here, somewhere over here, with the pivots such that it affords a rotation in a direction that is opposite to the outer ring. So we call this one inner ring. I'm going to use a different set of marker to explain the axes as well. So the outer ring will really be spinning around this axis, which is the x-axis, and the inner ring will really be spinning around this axis, which is the y-axis. So this really is the gimbal mechanism. Please note that this is the two gimbal mechanism. Let me just two ring. It's called two ring gimbal mechanism. There is another one that is called three ring gimbal mechanism that really has outer ring that is installed on two pivots, and then the inner ring inside it, and then there's one more inner ring inside the inner ring. So the axes is, one is the x-axis, then the y, and then the again x, and then the y, and then so on and so forth. Now the supports again is up to you how you design your gimbal. This one has two supports. This one could really have like one support Really, it really depends on how you design your gimbal, or it may have two supports as well, one on the top and one on the bottom. So the gimbal design of the gimbal varies, but the gimbal system is the same. It is, once again, I'm going to define it. It's sets of rings that are pivoted such that each ring spins in an alternate axis to one another, compared to one another. And then what is the idea is that anything that is sitting in the center of the center ring will stay stable. So for example, the center of this gimbal could be the camera, like I was talking about. So it could be the camera that is sitting in the center in a ring, which will be stable. Or it could be really be, you know, one of the beautiful applications of gimbals are in the moving vehicles, the objects in moving vehicles, such as like coffee mugs or bowls with cereal or cereal bowls, etc. and whatnot. And they're mostly used very, very interestingly on the boats. So if you have a go on a, you know, on a journey, you will see that the many of the objects in the moving vehicle, where the vehicle has lots of like motion involved in its regularly motion involved, then the objects will be installed on top of the gimbal. What the idea is, anything that is installed in the gimbal system will keep the object that is installed stable, whereas the rest of the base could be wobbly. However, the object will stay stable. So now how do we, this is what a gimbal is, so I defined it. Now, but how do we define it in terms of, remember, in terms of the concept of space, how do we define it in terms of objects? What really are the objects involved in a gimbal? Then I'm just going to write here, concept of space. How can we define it? How can we design it within a concept of space? So we have to really talk about objects. Then secondly, we have to talk about space and spatial configuration. And then third, we have to talk about operations. How do we do these all three things with respect to the gimbals? Now, the objects within a gimbal are really, you know, you've seen the base, supports, pivots, outer ring, inner ring. These are the objects. These are the objects for gimbal. Now space, how do we define space? Now within a space, you will say a gimbal, the outer ring is pivoted on two supports that are themselves sitting on a base, such that the outer ring sits onto the supports and the inner ring is installed inside the outer ring on two more pivots. That's the spatial configuration. That's how you define the space of this two ring gimbal system. Now operations, how will you define operation? Operations will be the outer ring is installed onto the two support system, that was the spatial configuration, now is installed such that when the outer ring spins around x-axis, the inner ring, this is which is pivoted inside the outer ring, will start spinning around y-axis. So that's the operations of this gimbal, and that's how we'll define it. So this is how we'll define something that isn't, you know, it doesn't exist, and so we design it using the concepts of object, space, and operations. Now, what if the object exists? How will you, you know, define it, understand it? So remember the Antikythera, once again, I'm going to mention that. So in the Antikythera, the object was a very complex object. So how do we understand complex objects is really by dissecting them into, or dividing them into manageable, less complex assemblies, and then understanding those assemblies by really dissecting them component by component to understand how different components come together to make a smaller set of assemblies, and how different smaller sets of assemblies come together to make the whole complex system. So divide and conquer. We study the relationship with them, we define the assembly rules, and then we use representations tools like sketches or digital model making or prototyping to really represent those that understanding of a system. So here's an example of an engine. And here is an example of the Lego assembly. Really, you dissect them both into smaller pieces, and smaller assemblies first and then into pieces, components, to understand how this assembly is made. So it's really analysis, less of a design, more of an analysis, and then after the analysis you describe using words or using any other representation method. So now what are we going to be doing in the lab is that, yes, we will be creating this gimbal system. We have already understood what a gimbal is. So we'll be doing two things in the lab. We'll be representing this gimbal using two representational media. One is the concept map. And what is a concept map? TS will be explaining what a concept map is. And the second, we'll be using a digital Lego software to really create a representation of this gimbal. So once again, gimbal is sets of rings installed inside each other such that when one ring spins in one axis, the inner ring spins in the other axis. And so that's the two-ring gimbal system definition. So we'll make a concept map of a gimbal regards to explaining how objects within this gimbal, and remember the objects are the rings, the pivots, the support, the base, how the objects within the system relates to each other in such a way when you apply certain operation, like when you spin the outer ring, how the rest of the gimbal functions. For example, in this case, the rest of the gimbal functions in the way the inner ring starts spinning in the other direction, the objects sitting inside the inner ring will be stable. So that's the operation of it. So we'll draw a concept map of those spatial configuration objects and how they relate to each other and how they operate. And then we'll develop a digital Lego model of this gimbal. And for that, the software at the moment that I have in mind, we will be using either MechaBrick or Bricklink. I will send an email out to you which software to use to make this gimbal. This is happening on September 14th, Monday lab. Now, I will still see you before the Monday lab. Now, that's it for the lecture. For the labs as well, I've explained what you will be expected to do. Now, there is a thing called pre-lab. Now throughout the course, you will see that before each lab, there's a small activity that we expect you to do before you go to the lab. That is called the pre-lab activity. So for this pre-lab, which is, the lab is on September 14th, before that lab, what you have to do, there's a small pre-lab, and that pre-lab involves opening up, installing, there's no installation, the software is online, opening a software, Lego Digital Designer software, which the link for which I will send you in the email, opening it and working, really playing with it to create a Lego model. And that model could be anything that involves a tower and a blade system installed on it, such as, for example, a windmill or a watermill or a pinwheel, which really has a stick or like a tower structure, and then some sets of blades that spins. So that is the mechanism that we will be creating as part of the pre-lab. So remember, there's a pre-lab and there's a lab. So pre-lab is due before the lab, and this pre-lab involves creating a pinwheel or a windmill or a watermill-like structure using the Lego software that I'll be sending you the link of in the email. Now that's the pre-lab. Now I will be seeing you before the labs, by the way. I will be seeing you on Wednesday, which is September 9th. at 4:30 p.m. So, well, that day we will be talking about this lecture, as well as we will also be talking about, we will be discussing, reflecting, as well as there is one activity that we will all be doing together in the live in the live session. Let's call it live lecture sessions. Till then, take care. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.